各位观众朋友，早上好，晚上好！
Dear
感谢大家
audience,
继续关注第16届
welcome to
哈
the
佛中国
16th
教育论
Harvard
坛。
China
我是
Education
本次论坛的
Symposium.
主席张
I
馨
am
月
the host
Valentina。
张馨月
在上个阶
Valentina.
段，我们进行了生涯
So
教
we
育、
have
跨文化的多
discussed
语言教
life
育，
education and
在这个
cross-cultural
时段，我们开
multilingual
启未来创新教
education.
育分论坛分
Now
享。
we are going to start
在
the
技术
future
教育不断
innovation
开放的
panel.
同时，什么样的
With the
能力正
development
在
of
被潜移
technology,
默化？
what are the
我们始终
abilities
相
that
信，
are
未来
weakened?
的世界
We always
需要
believe
AI
that
这
the
样的
future
工程专
world
家，
not only
更需要
need
那些
AI
触及
expert,
人类灵魂
it
深
also
处
needs
回响的创作者。看到创作
creators
者
that can
能
touch
激
the
发出的
deeper
大脑
part
有
of
灵感
human
的人，
souls.
在众生
We
悲
want
喜
them
中
to
能生出
inspire
同
us,
情与悲悯之
and
心的人，
we want them
在
to
维护
have the
自由、
ability
理
of
解与责
empathy.
任推
We
动公
want
平的
them
人。
to be
我们需要
responsible
致力
and
于让
fair.
人类存
We
心
want them
在这
to
闪耀的时代。
devote
我们需要真
themselves
真正正
into the
万万的
development
领导人。
of the
接下来，
humankind.
让我
We
们欢
need
迎未
wholesome
来创新
people.
分论坛的主
So
创
now
陈依依、
let's
王
welcome
晓
the
溪， 也
co-host
有嘉
of
宾们进
the
行分享。
Future
有请。
Innovation Panel, 陈依依 and 王晓溪.
大家好，欢
Hello
迎来到
everyone.
第16届
Welcome
哈佛
to the
中国教育论
16th
坛
Harvard China
未来
Education
创新教育分论
Symposium.
坛。
This is the
在
Future
AI 技
Innovation
术日
Education
新月异的
Panel.
今天，我们不仅
With
要
the
确保教
development
育
of AI
不仅
technology,
跟
we
时
need
代
to
步
make
伐，
sure
更
that
要让教育成为引领未来的动力，
education keeps
打
pace
破
with the
传统界限，
times, but
打造
also
一个
make
更
it a
加公平、
beacon that leads the
高
way
效、
into the
人性
future. We
化
want
且
it to
充满
break
温度的
traditional
教
boundaries,
育生
and
态系统。
we want it
这
to
是大家我
create
们
a
面
more
前的重大课
efficient,
题，
humane,
也是
and
本
warm
次论坛的
educational
核心议题。
ecosystem. This is the core
今
topic of
天
this
我们将
symposium.
深入探讨全
Today,
球视
we
野
will
下
delve
未来教
into
育的发
global
展趋
trends
势、
in future
未来创新教
education,
育的前沿
share
与
some
影响，
cutting-edge
构画未
innovative
来教育的
education
多元化路
practices,
径，
and
探讨
explore
如何在人
diversified
工智能的
pathways
浪
to the
潮中
future of
保
learning.
留并弘
We will
扬
also
人性的
discuss
温
how
度，
to
培养
preserve
具有
and
全球视
promote the
野
warmth
和
of
可持续发
humanity
展
in the
意识
wave of
的未
AI
来公民。
and nurture future citizens with global
我
visions.
是 Becky 陈依依，是本
I
次论
am
坛的主
Becky
创
Chen
之一，
Yi. I
哈佛大
am
学
the
教育学
co-host
研
of
究生
today's
院硕士，
panel. I
主修
hold
人类
a
发
MA
展、教
degree
育
in
和
Human
部管线资
Development
讯。
and Education
现就
from the
读于
Harvard
约翰
Graduate
霍普金斯
School of
大学神
Education.
经多样性
I'm
与神经学
currently
教育学
pursuing
博
a
士，
PhD
往期在
in
联合国生
Johns
物基金会
Hopkins
任职工作。
University. I have previously worked
我是
with the
王晓
United
溪，是本
Nations
次
and
论坛的
UNICEF.
主创之一，
I'm
约
Wang
翰霍普金斯
Xiaoxi,
大
the
学国际
co-host
教
of
育
this
与全球
panel.
领导力
I
硕
hold
士，
a
现
MA
就职
degree
于
in
旧金斯坦
International
大学教育基
Education
金
and
会，
Global
致力
Leadership
于
from
将
Johns
教育
Hopkins
与传统
University.
紧密结
I'm
合，
now
推动
working
教育
at
领域的
Beijing
创
Normal
新发展，期
University.
待为构
I
建更加
focus
创
on
新、包容、公平的
integrating
学习生
education
态
with
系统
media
构
to
建力
foster
量。
a more inclusive learning ecosystem.
接下来，请允许我隆
So
重介绍
now,
今天的6位嘉
please
宾。
allow me to
分
introduce
享
the
嘉宾
6
分别
special
为
guest
联合国
speakers.
儿童基金会纽约总部教育专家、经济学家
Dr.
姚
Yao
浩根博
Haogen,
士，
education
哈佛大
specialist
学
at
教学研
UNICEF.
究生院助理教授
Dr. Phil
Assistant
Capon,
Professor of
assistant professor
Education,
of
Harvard
education
Graduate
at
School of
Harvard Graduate
Education,
School of
Dr.
Education.
Phil Capon, 探月学校高中校长，国际
Principal
学校
Yang
联盟
Boyu of
学校认证
Moonshot
官
High School,
Cognia
a
学校认
school
证官，
accreditation
王
officer
勇
with
校长，
CIS,
杭
and
州云谷
Cognia.
学校高中部校长
Principal
王成
Wang
义校长
Chengyi of Hangzhou
Give and
Yungu High
Take
School,
Coffee 负责人，奈娃家
the
族
director
咖啡
of
店
Give and
长，残疾
Take
人士
Coffee,
咖啡技能培训
and
师
Coffee
陈路
Skill
磊
Trainer for
Give and
persons
Take
with
Coffee 负
disabilities
责
Chen
人，
Lulei,
全国首家文凭
director
培
of
训
Give and
基
Take
地主
Coffee
任
and
王小
head
燕，
of China's
欢迎大
first
家。
wheelchair barrister training base Wang
在
Xiaoyan.
这里也特别想提醒各位参会的
I'd
观
like
众，
to
在
give
聆
a
听嘉宾
quick
分享
reminder
时，也
to the
欢迎在
audience.
直播平
Please
台
feel
中
free to
分享你
post
的
your
分享和提
ideas
问。
or
我们的志
questions
愿者
on
也会
the
搜集
live
整理
streaming
并后
platform.
续的
Our
持续交流。
volunteers will collect the
下
questions
面
for
让我们
further
有请
discussion.
联合国儿童基
So
金
now
会
let's
教
give
育
the
政
floor
策首
to
席架构师
Dr. Yao
郝根尧
Haogen,
博
Chief
士，
Architect
他
of
将以
Education
未
Policy
从
at
危机到
UNICEF.
催化剂、
He
教育
will
领
talk
域的前
about from crisis to catalyst, climate resilience, digital transformation, and innovative financing in education. Welcome.
谢谢。首先我想确认一下我的
Thank you
声
so
音
much.
听得清楚吗？在这里。
I'd like to first confirm if you can hear my voice
早上
clearly.
好以及晚上好，各位。
So,
那
good morning
之前
and
也
good
跟
evening.
依依有商讨过，我
I
将
have
以英语
discussed
来
with Yi
做
that
这个
I
演
will
讲，
be
再稍后
delivering
交
my
代声音的
lecture
情形。
in English and
那
I
依依
will
可以进入
join
到
the
下面的
roundtable
讲
discussion in Chinese.
Right. Okay, so let me start with the education journey of an average child in today's world. From top to bottom of this graph, The global indicator indicates that and at the age of school entry of 5 years old, close to 3/4 of children are developmentally on track. However, by the age of school completion or 18 years of age, only 1/4 of young people have required full set of skills that can prepare them for life and work. The challenge is huge, although it may not be felt by people in Beijing or Boston. Next, please. On the other hand, like never before, we also possess unprecedented tools for transformative changes that include the advance in neuroscience, powerful data information systems, education technology that I know many are talking about it now, and climate resilient education systems. By leveraging these tools, we can not only address the crisis, but also drive reform that creates student-centered learning environment, bridge learning discontinuities, and bring children to school, regardless of their circumstance. As indicated in my topic, I would like to selectively and briefly cover 3 fields in education: the climate resilient education, digital learning, and the future of our education finance. Next, please. The environmental crisis and the learning crisis are somehow intertwined today. In 2024, at least 242 million students worldwide had their learning interrupted by extreme weathers, such as cyclone and heat waves. These events are exacerbated by climate change. This situation is only going to worsen since climate events are expected to become more widespread by 2050. Next slide, please. However, there is this impactful solutions. While nearly 80% of global business leaders see green skill as a top driver of green transition, we can address learning interrupted and help learning to earning by investing in infrastructure and green skills. $1 now can save $4 in a post-disaster school recovery. Climate resilient education is the best investment because it empowers girls and open up potential for future earnings and productivities. Again, that might not be something felt very strongly by people in Beijing or Boston, but that's really happening in the rest of the world. And we also have some programs such as AI program dedicated to cultivate the AI capacity of women. Next. And how are we going to ensure impactful solutions through investment in climate resilient education? The following 3 areas, when linked together, act as a flywheel for action at scale, including an observatory for environment impact and solutions, which should also gradually become AI-driven, transparent markets for localized adaptation of solutions, and more investment, including innovative financing for those adaptations. But what it means, local adaptations, allow me to also reiterate some examples supported by UNICEF that I also mentioned in my opening yesterday. For example, last year in Bolivia, schools were equipped with solar energy and rainwater system. In North Macedonia, the Ministry of Health and Education developed joint protocol to protect students during extreme heat. Peru launched a nationwide online climate course, and in China, thousands of young people are being supported to lead green business. These are real practical steps, and the list goes on. But for now, let me pause a bit and jump to another topic as well that capture great attention and probably even greater attention. Yes, please, next. So the graph here is a very simplified illustration of UNICEF's new digital education strategy, which is about moving beyond the tech adoption to learning outcomes. Based on the reflection of digital learning practice in the past few years, especially during the COVID time, we notice that whether children learn is more important than whether children take part. We need to build and scale based on the best evidence, research, and impact, and what works, what really works. And of course, we need to address accessibility for children with disability, gender digital divide, linguistic minority, and other bottlenecks of inclusion. Next, please. To facilitate this strategy, our Learning Innovation Hub was established in 2022 in Helsinki, Finland. It functions as a system constantly learning, cooperating, and adapting comprised of building block about tracking, exploration, curation, and actions. I'm not going to go deeper on this block, but I would like to again repeat some country example mentioned in my yesterday's opening. Last year alone in Sudan, where suffering conflicts, 44,000 children continue to learn safely online with our program. In Laos, teachers in 650 schools were trained to use digital methods. And in countries like Ghana and Indonesia, we help improve national digital learning systems. Next. I do, however, want to have one slide dedicated to AI because everyone is talking about it now. I mean, AI itself is expensive, but the usage of AI does not need to be expensive, right? And here's one very recent example that I want to highlight. By leveraging AI in the creation of accessible digital textbooks, UNICEF and OpenAI are making learning material more adaptable, inclusive, and accessible in Uruguay, especially for children with disability. AI can turn a writing book into audio in local language with very decent quality. And building on our Uruguay pilot success, we are aiming to scale this initiative to 50 countries by 2030, reaching 50 million children and 5 million teachers. Next, please. But before ending this topic, I do want to also highlight the need of infrastructure. A lot of investment are needed beyond the education communities to enable digital learning, including provision of electricity, connectivity, and making our internet data package cheaper. I think I mentioned yesterday that even in today's world, we still have 700 million people without any access to electricity. And if they can't even have electricity, we can't talk about AI or even just digital education to them. We can skip the next 3 slides. Yeah. Next, and next. Yeah, we can stop here. I was told that I have 15 minutes, but I just got a reminder saying that I probably have only like 10 or 12 minutes, so I'm skipping some. But I do want to stay here to say that when we are saying investment, we need to invest smartly, as I mentioned before. And by saying smart, it means being cost-effective. There are some solutions that we know are cost-effective, such as structured pedagogy. But there are other solutions, such as just giving the student a laptop or tablet. That was already proven multiple times. They are not the best solution. You need a holistic intervention, like training the teacher, etc. Next, please. So I was told in the chat box I have only 1 minute left, and I was also asked by Becky that to briefly introduce myself, why I'm ending in this industry. So I'm giving this last minute to this slide. When I was a college student, like many other people of my generation, we don't really know what we're going to do. Until one day I see a slogan on a school, a middle school's wall, saying that if you don't graduate from middle school, you fail the examination of work, or in Chinese, 初中不毕业，打工不及格. That was the moment that I start transiting my career path, career passion to education. I was major in information science at that time. So later, I become a volunteer teacher, also managing a volunteer team, and I gradually changed my major into education and economics. So in this slide, you can see that on the left-hand side was 2004 and right-hand side 2024. Um, uh, the boy standing on the platform is my younger son, and the boy standing next to me is my student's son. So I think, yeah, these two photos is kind of a romance for a middle-aged man like me as a signal for keeping the promise. And that also summarize my journey in education so far. So I will stop here. Thank you. I hope I did not pass the time too much. Yeah.
Hey there. I'm Phil Capon, and I'm an assistant professor of education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And my presentation will connect directly to some of the previous comments. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of me, and there's a link to the lab that I run at the Harvard's Ed School. And what you'll see in this picture is a picture of me with a book, and my family likes to joke this might be the only picture you see of me with a book, and that's because I struggled to read. I was one of those children referenced in the last slide that had difficulties learning to read and focusing in class, and so that's really influenced the work that I've done and the work I'm going to present today. If we go to the next slide. In the United States, we think of literacy as a civil rights struggle, and more than just an issue, we think of it as a struggle because there's been a persistent gap between students that have different racial and ethnic makeups. And so here you can see white students outperform African American students and Hispanic students consistently over time. Next slide. And we can think about disparities based on race and ethnicity. We can also look at them based on students with and without disabilities. And so if you look at the achievement gap between students with and without disabilities, it's quite staggering. Next slide. And this is not just a US phenomenon. As the last presenter so acutely put, literacy is a global problem. Academic achievement is a global problem. In this paper, we see that many children, most students in low and middle income countries around the world don't develop foundational reading skills. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of me. So I told you a little bit about myself, that I was a child who needed extra support to do well in school. And eventually I ended up being a special education teacher. So I provided academic supports to students that had disabilities. Next slide. And so in my research, and if you click through, the animations will show up. In my research, I'm primarily focused on what instructional practices are effective for students with or at risk for reading disabilities. And then going beyond just sort of what works for most kids, we have to have better sort of conditional understanding of for whom our educational practices are effective and under what conditions, because we know that nothing works for all kids. Next slide. And so that's sort of my program of research, is focused on identifying evidence-based instructional practices. Next slide. And the way I do this is through some key steps. And I think these steps are somewhat innovative in that they really focus on developing instructional practices in collaboration with end users or with teachers and educators and family members, and then rigorously testing them. So if you click to the next slide, you'll see that this work starts by involving educators that serve inclusive populations. Next slide, please. So it starts with involving educators, and then it focuses on prioritizing instructional practices that are theoretically derived. And then we recruit, next slide, diverse samples of participants and ensure study participation. And then the last thing that we're really focused on is using rigorous methods. And we take sort of a medical model where we use randomized control trials where students either receive our intervention that we've developed in collaboration with educators, or they continue with their business as usual conditions. And so we're using really rigorous methods to test what works and for whom, for what conditions. Next slide, please. And so a lot of my research and the research that I do with my colleagues is focused on what are the best ways to teach children, young children and older children who have difficulties learning to read. What is the best way to teach them to read? What is the best way to help them extract meaning from text? And so we're focused on instructional practices. And then we're also focused on systems, these systems that engulf these practices. And it's these systemic challenges that are preventing many students from being able to read. And so we also need systemic solutions. Next slide. And so in the US, we're really focused on providing multi-tiered systems of support. So this again draws on a medical model. And so all students, you can see, would receive tier 1 or core instruction. And then based on their response or their performance on a universal screening measure, they could qualify for more intensive interventions. And so they would receive a tier 2 targeted intervention. And then if they don't make adequate response there, we provide more intensive interventions. And so for students that are with or at risk for reading disabilities, and a group that I'm really focused on, they might need intensive interventions to be successful. Next slide. And so in this talk, I'm going to talk about 5 key attributes to successful early reading systems. And I know we have people that are on the call that are speak different languages. There are probably likely many people that speak Mandarin, and then there's folks that speak English. And we know that these systems use different writing, that these have different writing systems. However, these key principles of providing children with early, systematic, explicit, and I would argue also coherent and responsive instruction is really fundamental to providing to reaching equitable outcomes, both in the US and in China and elsewhere. So I'm going to talk about these 5 key attributes. Next slide, please. And I think we can keep clicking and maybe perfect. So as it relates to early interventions, there are a few things that we know are really important. There's this critical language development period in the early elementary grades. And so we know students that are age 6 or 7, kids that are in the US would be in primary school, grades 1 and 2. When students are provided high quality reading instruction in those grades, we see greatest impact. And so the best way to serve a student who's at risk for disability is to prevent it. And so we know that for many children, not all, there are some students that have really intractable difficulties learning to read, both in English and in Chinese. And for those students, it may not be fully preventable. But for many children, on the last presentation, they talked about how more than half of children don't have fundamental or foundational literacy skills. For many of those children, that could be prevented with high quality instruction. And that last question is, would we rather, I think in the United States and probably elsewhere, there's this wonder of, does this student really need an intervention, or will they just naturally acquire the language with more practice? And I think, one question to ask yourself is, would you rather provide an intervention to a child who may not need it, or fail to provide an intervention to a child who does need it? And I think if you provide a little too much intervention and students don't need it, then you can quickly exit them out of there, and that's not so big a problem. But if you forgo the opportunity or don't give an intervention to a child who really needs it, that can be quite detrimental. Next slide, please. And so, perfect. Thank you for showing that. So when we think about the second key attribute, so the first key attribute is early reading instruction. We need to help students to learn the alphabetic system in English or the symbol system in other languages. And key to that is providing systematic instruction. And so in English, this is a program that I helped to develop. We teach students phonics. We help students to map letters onto sounds, and that instruction needs to be systematic. So we have to start with smaller words and simpler sounds, and then build up over time. And then if you click on the animations, also crucial to providing systematic instruction is that we can't just focus on the code, learning to associate symbols and sounds. We also have to really teach students the meaning of words and to build their background knowledge, because we know over time, once students develop their foundational reading skills, what really is important for them to understand and engage with complex text, the kinds of texts we want them to engage in science, technology, engineering, math, they need to have strong background knowledge. And so we need to be systematic both on teaching them the code-based skills and on broader skills. Next slide, please. So the third key attribute of early reading instruction is explicit. And so what we know from learning science and from reading science is that students benefit from being provided explicit instruction. And so explicit instruction means that you identify a clear learning objective, and that you provide, you break this learning objective into a step-by-step explanations, and you do some planned examples, and then you model it for the child. So you show them, this word is cat, and you break down the sounds, and then they practice that. And then over time, you reduce the amount of supports. And so teachers at the beginning will take on more responsibility, or parents will take on more responsibility, but over time, the students take on more responsibility for the learning. And so explicit rather than implicit instruction is really critical when you're teaching students a new skill. Next slide, please. And this comes from a large body of research that shows that for novice and intermediate learners, or for students that might have some learning difficulties, that they really require explicit instruction. But what's interesting is we also find that this instruction is beneficial to students that are more advanced. Next slide, please. And so here, if we look at less proficient students to more proficient students, what we need more explicit instruction, so more teacher-directed, clear learning goals when students are less proficient. And then as they become more proficient, they can take on more of the learning, and our instructional procedures don't need to be quite as explicit. Next slide. So the fourth key attribute of early reading instruction is one that's maybe not talked about as much, and that's around providing a coherent learning experience. And so in the United States, and I think in other places, students are often receive, core instruction in their typical class, in their general education class. And then for students that have some difficulties, they might receive an intervention. And so you can think about in the triangle we looked at earlier, in tier 1, all students are receiving that core reading instruction. And then some students will get this tier 2 intervention. But what's interesting is oftentimes, at least in the United States, students will be taught using different practices in different settings. And so they might be taught to read in their core reading class one way, but then the teacher will use different language or different texts in the intervention block. And so what you're doing is you're asking the student, the one who has maybe some risk for a learning difficulty, to make the connections across these settings. And I think that's really difficult. And it doesn't make much sense to ask our students, the ones especially that are having difficulty learning to read, to make those connections. And so I think one key part of early reading instruction that we need to make sure is provided to all students, particularly those with difficulties, is to align our pedagogical practices. And so the same language should be used to teach students to read across classrooms. And the same sort of systems or instructional supports, for instance, in a lot of classrooms, we're using AI or generative AI to help students to learn to read, right? Or to understand stories. And so this generative AI tool should be the provided in the general ed setting, and it should be in an intervention setting. Or if we're teaching vocabulary development, using a vocabulary graphic organizer, that same graphic organizer should be used across settings. We shouldn't have students be responsible for drawing the connections. The other thing to providing coherent instruction is many times teachers will either focus on developing the code-based skills, so helping students learn how to read, to sort of crack the code. And then maybe other teachers, or at other points in time, they'll focus on helping students learn vocabulary and knowledge building and understanding stories and writing and engaging with science texts. But I actually think a more coherent, multi-component approach is necessary. So what we find in our research studies is that the students that have difficulty learning to read, so they have phonological difficulties or orthographic difficulties, they also often have broader language difficulties. And so they have difficulties understanding multi-step directions and oral communication. And so they benefit from multi-component interventions. And so I think a key part of innovative reading instruction that will prevent reading difficulties is focusing on coherent instructional experiences. Next slide. And so this graphic sort of shows how you could think about alignment, right? And so tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 students with reading difficulties or with risk for reading difficulties are likely to receive the core reading instruction, and they're going to be supplemented with instruction in tier 2 or in tier 3 settings. And that alignment, making sure that the practices, the texts that they're reading are aligned across tiers, I think will be a much more productive way of learning. Next slide, please. The last key attribute that I want to focus on is providing responsive instruction. And so this flowchart here comes from the National Center for Intensive Interventions. And what it shows is that when students are not making adequate progress in tier 1 in a whole class setting, they often will benefit from an intervention program and require an intervention program. And so for those students that are not making adequate progress in the whole class setting, we know that we need to individualize or personalize their learning experience. And so we do this by increasing our data collection and adapting instruction based on student response. So here you could see that students would start with an intervention program, and then you would monitor their progress over time. And if they're being responsive in their intervention, then you would continue. But if they're not, and for many students, they may not make adequate response right away, then we need to think about using diagnostic data and intervention adaptations. And so the fifth sort of key component of early reading instruction is providing responsive instruction, responsive to individual student needs. Next slide, please. And so here I went through and talked about some of the 5 key attributes of successful early reading systems. We want to provide early intervention. We know that in the early elementary grades, primary grades, that's when students are most responsive, this critical language period. We know that instruction, we want it to be systematic because students whose teachers organize instruction using a thoughtful process and go from teaching vocabulary that's related if they're focused on meaning-based skills, and then slowly increase the complexity of language over time. We also know that explicit instructional practices, ones where the teacher has clear goals, are necessary for students with reading difficulties or reading risk, but also beneficial for students that have more background knowledge. And then the last 2, I think, are more early, systematic, and explicit, are relatively well known in the United States and elsewhere, but not very well implemented. So we have, still have a reading crisis in the United States where many students are not reading on grade level. The more innovative attributes here are coherent and responsive. And so over the last 10 years, we've been really focused on how can we make the educational experiences for students with or at risk for disabilities more coherent? How can we make sure but the systems that are surrounding these students, the teacher in their general education classroom, their special education teacher, and their parent are all using pedagogical or instructional practices or supports that can really help these children. And then the last one, responsive, is really critical, because that's where for many students with disabilities, they have persistent difficulties, right? They need our very best instruction. And so the way we can provide our very best instruction is by collecting data and using that data to inform instructional practices. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I stuck within my time. Thank you very much.
非常感谢 Phil Capen 教授的精彩分享。那么下一位分享
Thank
嘉
you,
宾
Phil. The next guest speaker is Yang Boyu.
的国际化高中探月学校的高中
He
校长
is the
他在美国
principal of Moonshot Academy. He holds a master's degree in education policy from Brown University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Hong Kong. He's also earned a leadership certification from Harvard. He will talk about future-oriented educational design, cultivating fulfilled individuals and active, compassionate citizens. Thank you.
谢谢小溪。
Thank
各位
you,
哈佛中国
Xiaxi.
教育论坛的伙伴们，大家好。我是探月学
Hi
校的高
everyone,
中校
I
长
am the
杨
principal
很
of
高兴能
Moonshot
在
High
此代表
School,
探月学校和
and
公民
it's my
在世界
pleasure
发展
to
的
be
成员
here.
一起创新
I
去思考
represent
的
all
分享
the
们，与大家分享一些
peers
创新教育的实
and
践，尤其是在
colleagues at
AI
Moonshot
领
High
域
School.
怎么
I'd like
面
to
对
talk
教育挑
about
战与反思。
how we
下
can
面
deal with educational challenges in the age of
下
AI.
一页。首先，我想请大家一起与
So
我去
first,
思考一个问题：我们
let's
教育
think
体系
about
的
a
根本意义
question.
是什么？
What is
如
the
今全球
fundamental
各个国
meaning
家
of the
大概有
education
6%
system?
到6.5% 的 GDP 会
6
投资
to
于教育。
6.5% of GDP worldwide is invested in education,
而每个
and
青少年的大量精力
1/4
也投
of
资
the
于教育体系
population
中。
spend over
我们
half
期
of the
待通过
time
教育
to
是获得
education.
的，
So
也许是生活内在
what do we
幸福，
get from the
适应社会
education?
生活，
Do we
乃至
get
推
inner
动人类的
happiness?
进步。
Do we
下
adapt
一
to
页。
social life? Do we support civilization
然而，现
advancement?
当今所流行的
However,
孕育于第二次工业革命后
the
期的
current
教育体系
education, which
似乎
is
正在失
born
效。
from the
就生
second
活内在幸
industrial
福而言，
revolution, is
只有
failing.
15%
In
到
terms of
20%
inner
的青少
happiness,
年患有精神
globally,
障碍。
around 15 to
作为教育
20%
从
of
业者，
children
我
and
做一期
adolescents
知道的和
experience
教育
mental
体
health
远比这些官
disorders.
方数据更为严
And
厉。
I believe
而其
the
而就
actual
就社
data
会
is
经济而
higher.
言，
In
中国
terms of
16到
adapting to
24岁的
social
年
life,
纪， 也就是我们绝大多数接触到的
China's
基础教育的
unemployment
青
rate
少
for
年，
labor
失业率已经
aged
达到了
16 to
20%。
25 is
而美
around
国的学生贷款
20%,
超过了
and in
140
the
万亿。
US, student loan
就
debt
人类文明
exceeds
进步而言，
$1.7
我们看到
trillion.
了更大的挑战。
In terms of
在2008年，参与
civilizational
高校成立之
progress,
初，
we
我
are
们提出了
witnessing
5
more
大人类
severe
文明的新挑
challenges.
战： 生态崩
There,
溃、气
we
候变化、
proposed the
埃及的
5
大流
major
行、 教
challenges
育的
of
相关性
humanity,
以及人工智能
including
的失控。
civilization threat,
7年间，人口当
ecological
初预
collapse,
测世界
climate
没造
change,
成全球
pandemics,
变，
weapon
到
of
如
mass
今越来越多
destruction,
的
and
人受抗疫
uncontrolled
新冠
AI.
疫情，经历
Now,
密集的变
increasingly
世
more
之后，
people
我们
are
有些担忧，
experiencing the
甚至
impact
深
of
信不疑。
COVID-19
而
and
我们
the
今天的教育
impact
体系
of
是否有帮助
ChatGPT,
我
and
们帮
people
助
are
人类
starting
更
to
好地准
believe
备
our
和应对
assumption.
这些人类文明
So
的
can
新挑战
education
呢？
help us deal
下一
with
页。
the challenges we face
也
today?
正是基于这样对于人类文明延续及挑
So
战的思
based
考，在这
on
样大
our
时代背景
thinking
下，
about
18
human
年，探月学校
civilization,
成立，
in
提出了新的培
2018,
养
we
目标，
established
培养内心丰
Moonshot
盈的
High
个体，
School.
积极行动的
We
公民，
want to
提
educate
升人类的
fulfilled
文明延续
individuals
与
and
繁荣。
active,
而为
compassionate
了实现这样的目
civilization
标，在过去的几
citizens
年
to
间，
support
探
the
月进行了几系列的
continuation
创
and
新实践。
prosperity of human
下
civilization.
一页。
So we made
那探月学校
a
作为基础
series
教
of
育
innovative
创新最内
practices.
核的一个实践，就是素养本位教育。
So our
探月的
core
各种体系
concept
不
is
再以传统的单学科课教为基础，
competency-based
而建立
learning.
了自己的素养模
We
型，
have
如大家
established
目前
our own
看到的分
competency
享中的
framework.
左侧的这样一个素养模型。
So
探月的
it's
素养模
on the
型是探月
left-hand
课
side
程
of
的
the
根本目
slide.
标。
It is the
素养模型
fundamental
有
goal
3大
of
结
our
构，
courses.
其最内
There
核
are
的是探
3
月
layers
所
of
有课程都
structures.
会去深入落实的最重要的跨学科可迁移
At
能
its
力。
core
这些
is
能力被
the
分为认知能
transferable
力、自我
skills
引导
across
和社会
different
责任3大维度，
disciplines.
而每个维
They're
度具有
divided
进一步的
into
开分
3
和应用此
dimensions,
能力。
and
那么
there
下
are
面是
some
第二圈层，这
subcategories
是
in
核
each
心的能力
dimension.
素养，
The second
是根
layer
据不
is
同领域看待世界的
core
不同方式和
competencies
研究
in
方法，
different
来为学
fields.
生跨学科的解决真实问题打好基
They
础。
provide
而
abilities
这素养
to
模型
deal
的
with
第三圈
real
层
world
是为把
problems,
核心
and
思
the
维倾
third
向
layer
入门
consists
网站叫
of
habitual mind。它是
6 Six Habits of Mind. They are about the subconscious choices faced with complex situations. For example, when there are conflicts, some people might choose not to communicate further. Some people might try to understand different perspectives. They might even try to explore the reasons behind it. So these show different levels of empathy. So when students study, some students might stop learning when they're faced with something they don't know. However, some other people might make use of AI or other technologies to challenge what they do not know. So this is the different levels of curiosity. So our courses are different from those provided in traditional schools. We do not evaluate people or students based only on their academic performances. In Moonshot High School, we do not have standard answers. Based on real contexts, we want to nurture students' ability to solve real problems. Every student in our school will start their exploration of the real world. We divide our students into groups of 3 to 5, and they will solve problems that they truly care about through multidisciplinary approaches. They also develop mini programs and applications to solve mental problems and learning disabilities among young people. After inspiring their curiosity and motivation, they also need to learn knowledge in different disciplines. But we do not only care about test results. Our teachers will design some more professional missions for students to accomplish. For example, in physics, how can we launch a rocket? How can we innovatively calculate the area of a building? And in social sciences, they explore how they can support women in Afghanistan. For senior students, our learners need to find something they're good at to produce solutions to different problems. For example, some of our students are studying genetic engineering, and these are very specific and academic problems. Some learners also care about the development of rural areas in China and the experience of minorities in school. They solve problems in the form of projects. Of course, some students would prefer to choose art creation to express their understanding of the world. At the end of every year, we do not have a final exam. We have a development defense as the most important method of evaluation. Learners will produce a CV, and they will have a 55-minute defense to review how they have developed while doing their projects. This type of defense makes us more confident that our learners have the ability to face more uncertainties in the future. The second feature of our project is diversification and autonomy. Diversification is difficult to achieve. We have only 250 high school learners, but we have over 100 courses. They face students from all grades and ages. For example, if a ninth grader is interested in mathematics, they can choose to select more senior courses. Similarly, if they do not have much knowledge about a specific course, they can choose to attend a lower level class. Our teachers have transformed from an educator to an emotional worker. And in terms of pathways, we do not believe global college admission is the only way out. They can also go into employment and even entrepreneurship. A third feature of Moonshot practices is community building. We believe that a good school is not only about the building and the courses. It should be developed by students and parents together. In our community, We have a system of inheritance. We include students in different grades, and some of the students even establish their own lab. For example, Moonshot Design Lab held the graduation ceremony in 2024, and it won an award in design. They also have their own cafe and tea house. They are all run by our students. Our parents also come from diversified backgrounds. We cannot require all of them to deeply participate in the construction of the community, but we do have many platforms for parents to participate in. A parent of our second generation graduate is teaching design thinking in our school now. So that is an example of human connections. So that is the third feature of Moonshot High School. After learning about the core system, it might seem quite innovative for many educators, but 2 years ago, when ChatGPT hit the market, again, like when we just established Moonshot, we started to review our progress and ask ourselves why we create Moonshot High School. Humanity is both good and bad, and technology has become a magnifier for human nature. It brings material abundance, free from the suffering of birth, aging, illness, and death, rapid development of spiritual civilization, and we might even become a multi-planet species, entering a new age of civilization. But on the downside, it might also bring wealth disparity, ecological degradation, social instability. Human civilization could suffer from a catastrophic damage. And education has an important role to play. We deeply believe that education is a filter between humanity and technology as a magnifier. It makes a decision between magnifying the good side and the bad side, leading to very different results. H.G. Wells said that human civilization is experiencing a race between education and disaster. When we established Moonshot High School, we identified the 5 problems of civilization exactly because of this quote. And now, based on this quote, we are again thinking about the future of education. We have clearly realized that in this race, the teaching mode born from the second Industrial Revolution doesn't bring us what we want. And if we take a closer look at the education system, higher education has been involved in political struggles. It is supposed to set a foundation for human welfare. But now, fundamental education also serves higher education. We hope that in the future, we can break the limitation of higher education on fundamental education. We want education to truly face human life. We want our students to embrace a fulfilled life. And that should be the meaning of primary education. So against this backdrop, we have proposed a small-step plan. We hope that we can nurture fulfilled and proactive next-generation individuals. Based on an ever-renewing mission, we can use cutting-edge technological tools across the world to create real value. So this is our plan for a small step. We want to find 10 to 15 teenagers to join us and explore our new method of teaching. Under this method, we will use AI to create an opportunity for highly autonomous learning. They could truly engage in innovative projects and understand different aspects of the world. They could develop their empathy towards people who are different from them. The speaker is muted.
我的分享就到这里了，谢谢大家。
So that's all for my speech. Thank you.
感谢杨博宇校长的精彩分享。下一位
Thank you,
演讲者
Principal Yang.
程毅是
Our next
杭州
speaker
云谷
is
校高中部校
Yang
长
Wang Chengyi, principal of Yungu High School in Hangzhou. He graduated from the Institute of Education at the University of London, and he was a core member in the founding of Beijing No. 4 High School's international campus. He is a frontline educator and a senior manager. He is a pioneer in the field of international education. Let's welcome Principal Wang.
各位哈佛中国教育论坛的老师同学们，大家好。很
So,
荣幸
dear
能有这个
audience,
机会
hello.
跟大家
It's
做一
my
些
pleasure to
关
have
于
this
人
opportunity
工教育的分享。
to talk
今天呢
about
我们
innovative
的切入
education.
点呢，可能是更多的从我们发现的一些
So, my
问题
entry point
和
today
现
is
在目
more
前在
about
人
the
工智能
problems
上
that we
的
have
一个
identified and the challenges we are
分享的
facing
这样一个
now.
内容吧。下一页。其实在教育的终点看教育，
So,
我们
if
说这个
we
终点
look
可
at
能学无止境，其实也没有止境。
education from the
但是通过我
ultimate
们过
aim,
去
well,
这些
it's
年
not a
其
real
实
aim,
对
but
于学生
based
的教
on
研，其实
our research
初中、
on the
高中、硕士、
students.
大学普遍存在的其实是3个大问题。
There
第一
are
个，其实
three common
学习不能
problems.
脱节。
The first
然
problem
后
is
现
the
在 AI 的出现
disconnection
之后，大家
between
很迷茫，
knowledge
现在
and
学了一个东西，
application.
我该怎么
AI
用？
has
我该
made
去搜
many
它还
people
是
feel
去
lost
采用？
because they do not
另外一
know
个
how
就是
they should
这个
apply
同学
their
其实都在
knowledge
想
to the
我为什
real
么
life.
学习，
And
我这个
many
学习
people
的意
feel
义到底
lost.
是什
They
么？
do not know
那另
why
外一
they
个
learn.
这个普遍的其实就是自我认知的一个缺
Another
失，
common
就
problem
自己的
is
辨
the
识度没有，
loss
就是
in
对自己没有充分
self-awareness.
了解。
They do
那
not
其实这
truly
3个问题
understand
目前
themselves.
看好多
So
孩
these
子
are three
真是
main
碰到瓶
issues
颈。
that I have
下一页。
observed in many children.
那学用脱节，
The
其实大
disconnection
家在
between
成长
knowledge
过
and
程当中，不管
application.
是在学习过程当中，其实都能发现，
As a
我们自己
student
之
and
后其
as
实
a
真的
teacher,
赶不上这个
you
新的
might
变化。
realize
那我们
that
怎么
what
去
we
适应，怎么
teach
去应
cannot
对？
catch up with
在
the
面对 AI 带
changes
来挑
in
战
the
时，教
world.
育的云谷
So
需
how
要
can
不
we
断地提
adapt to the
升，不是
world?
超前，而是正当
I
时。
believe that
其
faced
实刚才
with
刚才
the
杨老师
AI-driven
说的，其
challenges,
实是
Yungu's
刚才讲的，
competency-based
都
education
无论
is
是
not
双
ahead
语
of
语
its
言，
time.
都是这
It's
个
right on
素
time.
养教育、创新学校里
So
面的
both
标杆。 下一
both
页。
Moonshot High School and Yungu High School are
我们看
great
这样的大
examples
背景呢，
of
其实国
competency-based
内外教育
education.
前沿就是发展到了一个什么程度？
If
这
we
教育
look
改
at the
革的重
present,
点，
so
还
how
是在
far
于
has
优质学校
educational
和
research
精品的一
advanced
个
at
分
home
享，
and
其实
abroad?
都集中在素养这2个字。
What are the
那
current
从未来的角
priorities
度
of
看，
education
我们看
reform
一下。
and what are the best practices? It's
从
all
未来的
about
角度来看，
competency.
我们现在其实面临的一个最
If
大
we
的
look at the
挑
future,
战，其实就是不
the
断的变
biggest
化。
challenge
那
we
人
are
工智能时代
facing
到底需要一个
is
什么样的教育？
changes. So
我
what
们
are
可
the
以借
talents
鉴
needed in the
我
age
如
of
何学
AI?
习， 我
What can
们
we
到底
learn
需要
from
达到
others?
什么程
How
度？
should we
刚
learn
才
and
杨
how
老
far
师
have
提
we
出了团
come?
队他的一些这个探索和创新和
Principal
一些分
Yang
享。
just
那我
talked
今天
about
呢，也
their
会集中在这个
exploration
云谷
and
上去
innovation. So now we will
下一
talk
页。
about our practices at Yungu High School.
那核心素养其实是国内外教育改革和个人创新的共识。那在
Core
云谷创业之初，我
competencies
们也
is
调
a
研了
shared
很多
common
不
ground
同的这
for
个
education reform, home and abroad.
教育组织
At Yungu
给
High
大家的这
School,
个核心素养。我
we
们其
have
实尤
made
其是
many
自己的
studies and
同
surveys,
下一页。
and we have cooperated with
那核
many
心素养是
international
我们
and
的一个
national level
那我们看
institutions.
2016年美国大学学会的这个
Core
调查，
competencies
在
have
被
become
看到的一些
priorities
个人
in
能力
higher
这个思
education.
维数学的素养，口头的这种交流能
In
力，
a survey in
跨文化多元化的这种素
2016,
养，信息素养
core
和报告的
competencies
素
are
养，这
identified
是一
as
个重点
writing
考察的这样
skills,
的一个
critical
指标。
thinking,
下一页。
oral communication skills, intercultural skills,
那核心素
ethical
养是
thinking,
需要
and
这个
information
重
literacy
点。
skills.
那我们看在2015年
Core
到
competencies
2020
is
行业
also
探
what
索
employers value the most.
对比一
From
下，其实
2015 to
我的这个
2025, we can
素养
make a
关键素养
comparison
包括批判性思维，包括这个创
of
造。
different competencies,
我们也看到一些
including
重
critical
点是
thinking
教育
and
的这个灵感，
creativity.
像这种
We
科技
can
素养，
see
像
that
这种好奇心、
some of the
终身学习，
competencies
这
have
都是要
got
持续
a
提升。
higher rank.
下一页。那核心素养也在国内的教育界被充分的这个认知，也被做了一些探
In
索，尤
China,
其在这
core
个
competencies is a trending topic of current explorations and actions. From the 2022 National Compulsory Education Curriculum Plan, it is stipulated that we uphold innovation, value successful domestic curriculum experiences and draw upon leading global concepts. We emphasize integration and hands-on learning. We need to cultivate students' core competence, including values, essential characters, and key capabilities. So how do we know if a school is competency-oriented? First, it's about curriculum, what is learned. Second, pedagogy, how it is learned. The third is assessment, how it is evaluated. And the fourth one is learning environment. Does it support students' development of core competencies? So why is Yungu High School a competency-oriented school? Competency education is an inevitable goal for the reform of education systems. In terms of content, we need to pursue knowledge and also solve problems in our textbooks. We need the proper mindset, values, and the character, and the proper learning method to solve real-world problems. In terms of learning method, we have transformed from a teacher-centered approach to a combination of teacher and students. In terms of evaluation, we stress the evaluation of the artifact, and we also have evidence to prove that students have the ability or competency. The most difficult thing of competency education is evaluation. We cannot simply provide a feedback without sufficient and solid evidence. And in terms of learning environment and culture, we respect every child and we recognize every child as an individual. So this is the core competency framework at Yungu High School. We are a K-12 school. So we have frameworks for primary, secondary, and high schools. So for high school, the red block is a sense of purpose. The yellow block is collaboration, judgment, and global championship. And the blue blocks are future-facing competencies. So we focus on how children develop and their possibilities in the future as world leaders and innovators for social good. So I will briefly talk about the 7 core competencies, including creativity, entrepreneurship, purpose, collaboration, communication, global competence, and critical thinking. So we have our own assessment, including formative assessment, performance-based assessment, and competency defense. Before graduating, every student goes through 4 rounds of defense. And each of them decides whether they can get the accumulative credit. So these are the 27 indicators and the 7 competency domains. We have an indicator system divided into 3 levels. The first level is competency domain, the second level is indicators, and the third level is measurement. We have a very clear definition of the indicators and the measurements when students do their defense. And we try to level the playing ground for students with different professional backgrounds. I'm proud to say that we are the first high school in China that include the exhibition, nurturing, and evaluation of competency development. Many students now feel quite lost. We always say that it's impossible to be someone you've never known. So what is the direction and goal for your study? It is important to establish a basic understanding of this. So Yungu has a unique advantage because we can leverage Alibaba's cross-sector resources. We provide students with opportunities of internship so they can participate in top industries and departments. We are in collaboration with over 30 non-profit institutions, and they can provide students with diverse experience and opportunities. So this is a demonstration of the photos when our students participate in internship. So overseas college education is a great personal project to develop self-awareness. Every application season is a good opportunity for personal growth. Between advantages, interests, and values, we find the sweet spot of students. We hope that our students can know themselves, care for themselves, and have a strong awareness of what they truly want. And this is what our instructors try to help the students to do. So how do we support an application? How do we support an irresistible offer? These are some examples and demonstrations of what we do. At Yungu High School, we believe in long-term development. We want students to have good academic results, but we also want students to have a better future. Yungu High School have many explorations in technology. It builds the connection between the school and the future through technology. And our students are exposed to AI development. Our vision is a technology-oriented future school. We want to benefit more children through the power of technology. So this is the tech-driven school vision we have established when we founded the school. We want technology to empower education. So what has Yungu achieved? And the following slides are related to our attempts in technology, but because I don't have enough time, I think I need to skip a few slides. And eventually, what abilities truly protect our human uniqueness? What kind of education preserves the value of human beings? How do we prepare children for future uncertainties? What kind of curriculum can motivate children? What kind of learning develop fundamental competencies? And what kind of teachers support and walk alongside students? These are all questions we ask at Yungu High School, and we also provide solutions for them. So in terms of our founding vision, we want to cultivate students who are ready for the future and make contributions to the reform of Chinese education. We believe that the only thing that doesn't change is changes. I hope that we can provide some insights and experience for you. Thank you.
好的，感谢王成义校长的精彩分享。
Thank you,
那么下一
Principal Wang.
组分享嘉宾是 Give and Take 咖啡负责人
Our
奈娃家
next
族咖啡馆
speakers
进驻
are
兼运营
co-director
可
of
持续
Give
咖
and
啡
Take
融合教
Coffee,
育残障
manager
人士
and
咖啡
training
系统执行
developer
导师
at
陈露蕾
Nevermind
，Give and
Cafe,
Take 咖
Chen
啡负责
Lulei,
人，全球首家轮椅咖啡师
co-director
主
of
任
Give and
王小
Take
燕，
Cafe,
他们将合作用数据
principal of
为我们
China's
共同
first
带来
wheelchair
当咖啡
barrister
香
training
钻
center,
透
Wang
残
Xiaoyan.
障的壁垒。
Together, they will
咖啡的
present
融合
When
教
the
育实践
aroma of
有请
coffee breaks barriers, inclusive education practices at Give and Take Coffee.
看一下我们 PPT， 大家好，非常高兴
Hello
今天能够
everyone,
站在这里，
it's my pleasure to
可以
be
跟我们
here,
分享我们的故事，
and we will talk about our
我
story.
也很感动。我是王小燕，阳光公益咖啡项目的负责人。
I
和
am
我
Wang
一起的
Xiaoyan,
是使用手语的
and my partner
Innovate 联合创新
is Chen Lulei. She will be presenting in sign language.
好，我们下一页，我现在应该是今天在这里，我跟露露要分享的
So
不只是
here,
一家
Lulu
咖啡
and
企
I
业的故事，
will share a story of a cafe, but it's also about inclusive education for people with disabilities. I am Wang Xiaoyan. I suffer from spinal cord injury since I was born. My parents have always been concerned about my future. Am I confined to a wheelchair for life? Is it true that I can never be independent? But through rehabilitation, education, and training, I have become a social worker and a wheelchair barrister. Eventually, I become the director of the National Wheelchair Barrister Training Center. I become an educator who can truly help others. So in the photo in the middle, we can see my partner Lulu. When she was 8 months old, she lost her hearing because of a fever. But at Give and Take, she shows that silence is not an obstacle. It helps people focus. Now, Chen Lulei is working at Give and Take to train more students and barristers with disabilities. On the right-hand side, you can see Yin Tianbao and Yin Tianyou. They are visual impaired barristers. Tianbao lost her eyesight, but he has exceptional memory. The training process of becoming a barrister is very difficult. For hundreds of times, he wants to give up, but our training team will tell him that it's all right, we can start again. We will always be here by your side as long as you don't give up. In 2022, July, he became the director of the first Give and Take coffee shop with barristers with visual impairments. Through this empowerment system, we know that there are no boundaries between disabilities and career. The only different thing is passion and abilities. We have become from being helped to creating values, and now we can help each other. Our education system not only covers people with spinal cord injury or hearing impairment. Here, we have trained children with autism. They can make a drink here and give the drink to their parents who have been taking care of them. We also provide service for people with intellectual disabilities. We also invite prosthesis users to experience making coffee in our shop. During our training and education, we bring in technology as assistance. We use them to help us better learn and make coffee. For example, for hearing impaired barista, they use wristbands which vibrates to notify when they have new orders. And for barista with visual impairments, they wear smart AI glasses and the camera detects QR codes and broadcasts information. We are also designing more advanced exoskeleton chairs so that wheelchair barista can reach what they want. These technologies do not replace humans. Instead, they magnify the connection between people, and they help us learn and live our lives. We're not only a cafe. Inclusive education should be a systematic and sustainable empowerment system. We cooperate with higher education institutes. For example, at Zhejiang University, we set up a cafe where our barrister can become mentors, and many students come here to learn about sign language and making coffee. Here, they can experience what we just talked about, the technological assistance and their communication and mutual learning breaks the barrier of communication. When our barristers go into the campus, they help high school and college students understand the true status of people with disabilities. Many people might still believe that people with disabilities could not leave their home. They are visible. But the fact is, we have already been integrated into the society. We are also working, we are also studying. So through these promotions, I hope that this generation of children can have a more realistic understanding of how people with disabilities live their lives. And I want to break the cognitive barrier. We have a Hinichijo Cafe on Yongkang Road in Shanghai, and there is a wall. Barristers make coffee behind this wall. We set up the wall because they need to be protected and they don't want people to stare at them with curiosity. That is a safe space where they can make coffee, and maybe one day they can go out of the room and bravely embrace the public. At Taiguhui, we also have a dark experience exhibition center where common people can experience what it is like to lose our vision. People might feel lost in full darkness, but at the same time, they can feel more relaxed and have more open conversations with friends. They can truly experience what it is like to live with disabilities, and that's how empathy and mutual understanding can be reached. At the Shanghai Yangzhi Rehabilitation Center, people with spinal cord injuries can use wheelchairs to navigate the barrister training center. And here we train people with various disabilities to become barristers. When they see us living our own lives and working, they might be able to regain control of their lives. So this is how a life can impact another. We are not only developing an innovative education model. As an educator, we are redefining the identity of educators. Even we have disabilities, in fact, we can still become an educator. Through our own experience and identity, we can better impact other people. And we can create new labels for people with disabilities. These seemingly random things, including Taiguhui, the cafe with a hole, and the cafe in the hospital, these seemingly random things all point to one common idea. Even we live with different types of disabilities, we can still be educators. Through our experience, our knowledge, and our identity, we can try to affect other people, including other people with disabilities and the common people. We believe that the aim of education is not to correct differences. We want to open up more possibilities. We can reduce bias through empathy and provide assistance through technology. We hope that we can create an ecosystem where everyone feels empowered. As someone with disabilities, I used to be defined as a student someone needs to be taken care of, or someone that is incompetent. However, I hope that my partner and I can use our skills as barristers to change the reality. We want to show that we can become an educator. We can train barristers and we can change other people's understanding of people with disabilities. Through our own experience, we can show the public that we can be educators and creators. We can even be leaders in changes. When people with disability participate in education, I believe that there will be more innovative perspectives and understandings because we can truly understand what we need in real-life scenarios. For us, we do not need empathy to understand people with disabilities because we are people with disabilities. Through our expression, I hope that we can open up unlimited possibilities of education to help people with disabilities to live a better life and be who they truly want to be. Every individual has the right to decide who they are. Every life can become an educator. We can become anyone. At least I hope that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Wang Xiaoyan 老师和陈露雷老师
Thank you, Wang Xiaoyan, Chen Lulei, for your very inspiring speech. Thank you so much.
下面呢，我们进入圆桌讨论。
Now let's move on to the roundtable discussion.
我们先有请浩根博士、杨校
The
长和
first
王校
question
长
is for
回答
Dr. Hao Gen, Principal Yang, and Principal
如
Wang.
何在人工智能的浪潮
In the
中
wave of
保留
AI,
并弘扬人性
how
温
can
度
we
培
preserve
养具有
the
全
warmth
球
of
视野和
humanity
可持
and
续发展意
cultivate
识的
future
公民？
citizens with global vision
那
and
老
an
师
awareness of
想先回
sustainable
答一下
development?
这样按照顺序的话，姚博士，要不然您
So
先
shall
来
we
回答
give the floor to Dr. Yao
叫
first?
浩根就可以。
好嘞
我想在科技浪潮中保持这个
I
人性
think
的
in
温
the
度
wave of
最关键
technology,
的是教师或者说导师。具体来
teachers
说
or
是
mentors
教
are
师培养
essential for
教育
preserving the warmth of humanity.
那今天我们有那么多
Or
新
more
的技术，包括
specifically,
AI，
the
那
training
教
and
师得会使用技术，这个无需多说。他们也需要利用
the
技术，因
training
为
of
AI 已
teachers.
经到达
Now
一
we
定
have
程度，
many new
所以他们在
technologies.
今天
Of course,
也
teachers
有
need
他
to
们
be
在实
able
践
to
时候
use the
小菜
technologies.
之类的。那在不侵犯
I
隐私
know
的
that there is
情况
a
下，老
an
师要学会
application
利
of
用技术，
AI that tracks
这
eye
些
movement
信
to
息
detect
跟
whether
才能
students are
产生这些
absent-minded.
更深
So
入的这个一对一
as
的
long as
这
no
个
privacy is
人性定
infringed,
造的这个
teachers
教育。
need to
那
know how
除
to
了量身
use
定
these
造的教
technologies
学，
and
就是
the
我们
new
要培养教师
information
这
to
个和权
produce
力交流
tailor-made
沟通的
education
能
plans.
力，
And the
包括
second,
和
we
特
need
殊需
our
求
students
协同。
to have
刚才那个
the ability to
男人咖啡
communicate
师
with
的例子
teachers
非常有
and
趣，
make
他
common
激励了
progress.
我相信
I'm
这
very
个
impressed
导师的
by
一份力。
the presentation
那在
of
待遇的话，
the
可能这是一个更加
barrister with
宽泛的
visual
一个
impairment,
话题
and
来
I
讲。
believe that the
最直
mentor
接
is very
最这个
important in
就是
his
最直接的应该
development.
是教师工资的待遇。
And
另外我要澄清一点，
an
刚刚我聊
important
了到
thing
我
is
不是
about
基
the
于中国
payment
美国，
for
我是基于
teachers.
全世界的
It
一
is
个
not the
一般
situation
的
in China or the
第一
US,
个
it
第
is
二
the
是我们
general
要
situation around the world.
在待遇上也要让
We
教
need
师有这
to
个培养自己领导力的机会。我们
give
也要关注
teachers
教师的
the
这个心理
opportunities
状态，
to
以及
develop their own
帮助
leadership.
教师
We
获
need to
得将
focus
来
on
一
the
起
mental health
相
of teachers
相
and
匹配的身份。
give
现
them
在
the
全世界所有
salary
的
and
这个
identity that
相
can
当于教育
match
中
what
教
they
师的
give
身份
us.
其实也是一个
For example, there are many refugees worldwide, and the identity of teachers among
简而言之
refugees
就是教
is
师的
an
这个
critical
待遇
issue
上
because they're teaching in
在
other countries.
冷冰冰的机
So
械
the payment and the training of educators are very important for the preservation of the warmth of humanity.
到教师的温度
Thank you so
非
much.
常的就是重要这个问题。那么我们有请杨校长
So now
来
let's
就是
give the
回
floor
答一下这
to
个话题。
Principal Yang to address the
谢谢
same
好的
question.
这个问
Okay,
题其实
thank
问
you.
的是如何保
So
留
the
并弘
question
扬人
is
性的温
about
度。在我
preserving
们
the
的分享
warmth
过
of
程中，我提
humanity.
到影
So
响大家
during
的
my
人性向善、人
presentation,
虚恶，
I talked
和我
about
们人
the
性
good
向善的
side
实力。
and
那
bad
在过
side
去
of
10年
humanity.
的教育实践过程中，因为
During
我
the
自己
past
曾经
decade
对
of
于这个
education
人性
practices,
这个人性善还人性恶的问题，有过很长一段时间的自我的辩
I
论。那在这个
actually
过程中，我发
struggled
现我
about
得
the
到的
good
答案
side
就是
and
人性
bad
不
side
向
of
善，又
humanity.
趋利，或者人
So
性
my
不向
answer
善，又
is
趋
that
恶。
There are both good sides and bad sides, and in the wave of AI, we want to preserve the good part of humanity. So in my presentation, I mentioned that education is the future of humanity. As educators, we are responsible to pass on values. We have developed many idea models at Moonshot High School. So our value is merciful to all beings, and we hope that all schools can establish the baseline as kindness. In the past 2 months, we have made many new practices against the job of artificial intelligence. We have set up 3 events during which we invite young people to tackle different problems using artificial intelligence. And we are having one in Shenzhen right now, and it is to use artificial intelligence designs to help people with disabilities. Every time we start with a bingo game with 16 videos, we let the children see groups experience and the scenarios that they have never been exposed of. And after this process, I can see that they are showing the good parts of their humanities. For example, in terms of AI language education, some students are concerned about the mental disease of teenagers and left behind children. So I believe that first, schools should have their own value choices and orientations. And the second part is about what to do. We need to see, understand, practice, and reflect. First, we should see the problems, because if we do not see, we cannot understand. Seeing is not about sympathy. Our mechanism should help our students to truly understand the differences and establish empathy. And understanding should be practice-oriented. During our practices, we should try to have dialogues and help people. For example, when you are in dark, you can truly understand what blind people are going through. And when you truly communicate with left-behind children and give them the product you have designed, you might not take granted for many things. And after that, we have a reflection, which is also a process of seeing. Thank you so much about the good sides and bad sides of humanity. So the process is to see, to understand, to practice, and to reflect. So now let's give the floor to Principal Wang. Yes, I'm very impressed by Principal Yang's speech. I'd like to talk more about the central level. With the rapid development of artificial intelligence, I believe that the simplest and most sincere aspects become important, because in many occasions, algorithms even know ourselves better than ourselves. If you open a web page, there are many products recommended to us based on our browse history, and there is nothing ethical involved. It is purely based on your website history, and they believe that this might be something you're interested in. So this is something very cold. Compared with algorithms and artificial intelligence, our ability to solve hand-on problems needs to be promoted. I used to say that AI can never understand why, when 2 people are having dinner together, someone will try to get the bill first. And AI can never understand why people drink to create a better environment at dinner. These are things that AI can never understand. So as a teacher, my experience that My experience is that we need people to educate people. I believe that AI cannot replace the existence of teachers. No matter how AI develops, it only gives you knowledge, but in terms of competency and the way we use knowledge in a benevolent way, this is not replaceable by artificial intelligence. Even if maybe the algorithm understands you more than yourself, human communication has become ever more valuable.
感谢王校长的分享啊，王
Thank
校
you,
长在
Principal
我们
Wang.
从感官层面真诚、简单、以人为本，然后出
So,
发，帮我们
Principal Wang talked about how to be sincere and how our education should still focus on human. This is in line with our intention when we established the Future Innovation Education Panel. We hope that more teenagers can have social responsibility and personal leadership abilities. So now, I'd like to invite Phil Capen, Wang Xiaoyan, and Chen Lulei to answer the second question. How does globalization and AI reshape inclusive education?
Phil Capen, Xiaoyan Wang, and Lulei Chen help us answer the question how globalization and AI are reshaping inclusive education. Do you mind to answer the question first, Dr. Phil?
Yes. Well, I think this symposium is a powerful example of how globalization is connecting and supporting cross-cultural exchange. I was able to learn about the UNESCO education initiatives. I was able to learn about innovative high schools in China that are sort of leading the way and how we can help students to tackle big problems. And then I also was really excited to learn about the coffee company and the organization promoting awareness about people with disabilities. And so I think this is an example of how globalization can help foster dialogue across different parts of our world. I also think that globalization is leading to and going to continue to lead to greater access to educational resources. I know UNESCO has a lot of resources available for free. You can also think about Khan Academy and lots of other resources that have helped to make educational experiences worldwide available. In terms of technology, I think technology has played a huge role in improving the lives of students with disabilities. And so if we think about assistive technologies have helped to break down barriers, particularly for students with language and literacy difficulties. So the students that I study, they really benefit from having resources like text-to-speech and speech-to-text that enable them to engage with written materials and to create written materials even when they have difficulties with understanding and speaking. And so those are some examples around assistive technology. I think that more broadly, that AI will allow us to create more personalized learning systems for children. And so I talked about earlier in my presentation about how we increase in the instructional supports for students based on their response. And I think that, artificial intelligence systems are going to really help us to personalize instruction, particularly for students with difficulties. Our most complex learners, the teachers of those students will benefit from having assistive supports. And I think AI can really offer that. And so I think, globalization and AI are critical to the work that we're doing in creating a more inclusive educational environment for students with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phil, for your answer about these questions. And you mentioned about, in your lecture, you talk about disability, personalized learning structure and things. And that's what we discovered recently, like AI can reshape in the topic of inclusive education. 那我们有请小燕老师和陆磊老师来帮我们共同回答一下。
Now let's invite Xiaoyan and Lulei to answer this question. So now we have some real real-time translation apps. It is very useful and friendly for people with disabilities and the reading problems. I hope that in the future, AI can design more features. For example, it can help us understand sign language because this is the native language for them. I have also come across some elevators with sensors, but they cannot identify if you are a normal worker or someone who needs to use wheelchair because our pace and speed is entirely different. If it can be recognized by artificial intelligence, the elevator would know who is coming towards it, and they can have different settings to help us. And in campus, if we have designs like this, we can have a better learning experience. Because based on my own experience, I believe that the settings of a campus need to take better consideration of different needs for people with disabilities. That's how it can help us become a better learner, to learn more knowledge and become the next generation of educators.
稍等，杜雷老师。OK， 好，谢谢大家的精彩分享。
Thank you so much for your brilliant insights. Xiaoyan and Lulei just mentioned that real-life translation can help people with hearing impairments. And they hope that in the future we can have apps for sign language translation. Thank you all for your interesting speeches and insights. Thank you so much. Our panel is coming to an end. We have journeyed from theory to practice and explored multiple dimensions of future-oriented education. Each guest has provided valuable insights. Thank you so much, and I'd like to thank the audience for their participation and engagement. I hope these conversations can spark new ideas. When the tide of technology rolls in, we should always remember education is not about filling a bucket, but about lighting a fire. In this panel, we also launched a campaign, My Vision of the Innovation Future Era. We collect ideas and practices from diverse sectors. Around SDGs, we will present outstanding cases and please continue to follow us. Today's panel is coming to an end, but we believe this is only a beginning. We look forward to continuing this journey of innovation and growth in education together. That concludes today's panel. Thank you for your participation.
感谢未来创新教育分论坛的主创和嘉宾为我们带来的精彩分享。
Thank you for your interesting insights, and I'd like to thank the audience again. This panel is coming to an end. Please continue to follow us. We will have another keynote speech, a family education panel, and art education panel. Our keynote speaker is Professor Luo Guoshen from Carnegie Mellon University. Thank you.